Hello my beautiful friends, welcome. Anna Alchemist of the Arts here, and in this quick reading we're going to be looking at the week ahead starting from Monday the 4th of March 2024. I'm just going to run into the intuitive messages, the general energetic themes that I'm seeing coming up in the collective, and try and provide a bit of guidance on how we can navigate these somewhat turbulent energies at times and how we can best grow through them. So the thing to note is at the very end of the week, we have Mother's Day here in the UK, and that's also the new moon. I really feel like this week we're going to be looking at how best we can strike a balance with our own energy, with our endeavours, with the things that we need to do, and really beginning to recognise some of the things that might be draining or depleting us. With the beginning of warmer weather here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're at the tipping point where the wheel will turn and we're almost entering spring. You can feel nature coming back to life. You can see the new growth. You can see everything stirring once again. And I think many of us could be feeling quite similar at this moment, and also recognizing where our potential energy, the energy that we have that can be invested into growth, into new life, into new endeavors, new beginnings. Where is that perhaps being depleted? Where is it being drained? Is there a source, a relationship, a job, an activity, a habit, anything that feels like it's draining us? And it feels like it's going to become all the more apparent where we can step into a specific place or a situation, something that used to be wonderful perhaps, something that used to make us feel great, or something that we used to enjoy, and there is that sense now that all of a sudden maybe it doesn't gel anymore. It's the sense of we're shedding that skin. We have reached another level within ourselves, and as the wheel turns, as we step into a new season, we step into a new season of life as well. It doesn't mean that it perfectly correlates timing wise, but most often these focal points of the year, as we break it up into the seasons, and within the pagan wheel of the year, you have the 8 points. So you have the midway points between each of the seasons as well. We have those moments of reflection, and there is a set pattern that aligns quite beautifully to nature that we can follow, that we can find our experiences within and find a common ground, find something that is very relatable with the outer experiences that we are witnessing. So it might feel like a time now where you want to really refocus some of that energy, refocus it back into self, into the things that we've been working on, recalling power back from sources that perhaps has been draining us, or just no longer feels like it's something that we wish to invest into. And as we go through those processes, I do feel like this, for in a lot of ways, how do I best explain this? I feel like some of these decisions are going to be made a lot easier for us. And actually, as we simultaneously reflect upon what feels right for us and the direction in which we wish to travel, we might find that there is room and a necessity for these open conversations and communication with others, with important people in our lives, so that we can discuss some of these changes, especially if they involve them. So it could be a really good time to reflect upon some of the changes that we are ready to make now, and that could require a great deal of open and honest communication. It also might require us to take some time and fully reflect on ourselves, and perhaps take a look at where we have come so far through this year. I dare say there could be challenges that we've already overcome in the last couple of months, and new things that perhaps feel like they've been sent to try us, and yet we found better ways to navigate the difficulties and the changing circumstances. At this point right here, we're stepping into this new cycle. It's an invitation to step into that new cycle. And it's a recognition we have to recognize within ourselves. In order to be completely honest about the things that we want to change, we first have to be honest with ourselves And that can be one of the hardest parts when we look at something. And it could be I really am getting the sense that some things could be long established. And I actually feel like this is a bit of a trend and pattern we'll be seeing on the macrocosmic scale throughout the world in repeating patterns, as these things often do. And we experience them in our own microcosmic ways. So there very much could be this sense of institutions that we expected to be around forever, suddenly either fading into obscurity or closing doors or shutting down, things moving in a different direction. We ourselves might decide that it's time to leave behind certain things that have felt like institutions, things, pillars that we built, that we stood upon, felt like they were going to be there forever. And again, these can be constructs of the mind. These can be beliefs, long-held ideas about certain things that have meant everything to us up to a certain point. And it's not that they no longer mean anything to us. It can just be that we have come to a point where it has served a very valid and vital purpose in our lives. Those institutions, those patterns, those habits, those set of ideas, beliefs, whatever it is, they've served a very vital purpose in our lives. But now we're ready for something new. And to frame this in a constructive way that is focused on our growth, it just goes to show how far that you've come. If you're feeling like it's time to change, if you're feeling like you are ready to get to that next level within, it might well be that you can't stay where you were. I mean, that's logical. But at the same time, if you were to stay there with that whole set of everything in your life completely the same as it ever was, and everything else was around you was changing, you could potentially start feeling stuck. It could lead to that stagnant kind of sensation where you feel like there is so much potential in the future, but it stays in the future and we stay stuck in this idea of how everything was supposed to be because of how it was. And I feel like a lot of people within the collective right now are going through their own versions of these experiences, where we're moving and traversing from one self-identification, one role, one purpose perhaps, one sense of our self-expression. And as we're stepping into something new, there is this period of transformation, of growth, of change. And that can be really uncomfortable. That if we use the time-loved metaphor of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, that middle phase, the actual transformation part, you have the solidity of existence pre and post that transformation. Before and after the transformation, you know exactly what everything is. But in the middle, things feel more unknown, more intangible. Actually, that's where we have our most power, because that's where we can actually determine what we grow into. But it can feel intimidating, it can feel overwhelming. And this is just that reminder that if you were in that in-between state, give yourself some grace and allow for this transformation to occur. I think that we can get to that sense of transformation we can make best of our transformation process, to reframe that. We can make best of our transformation process if we, day by day, focus on the goals, the attributes, and the actions that will help us to become that greatest version of self in the present moment. And that's a phrase that I use quite a lot, greatest version of self. And I think it's very important and valid to say that greatest version of self might have evolved greatly too. It's supposed to. That's just a phrase that I use. You could have your own ideas, beliefs, and terminology to describe that, what that is, who you are, who you wish to be, your vision of future self, your dream life, dream job, all of it. It encompasses everything. So in this process, as we're shifting from one set of beliefs, ideas, identification of self into the other, our power is in the present moment. as ever. But it also means that with those changes, things can feel strange sometimes, and not just for us as well, because if we're very aware of this process, we can give ourselves grace. We can give ourselves the self-care that we need, some patience, or we have the tools and the skills that we need perhaps to deal with this without feeling like everything is falling to pieces, even though it is okay. We all feel like that sometimes. But there is also the possibility you might notice that others around you could be spinning out, for a want of a better world, and there could be a lot of raised tensions with people. And again, I think it's finding the balance of knowing when to give somebody else some grace and to walk away, to prevent conflict, but also to be very clear with our boundaries and with our needs when we need to. It really depends on the nature of the relationship, but I personally think this is an opportunity for us to sample new ways of doing things, to try new ways of doing things, of expressing ourselves, of communicating our needs. And that could yield interesting results. If we look at it scientifically, all of these changes and experiments yield data. There's no failure, there's just experience. So we try new things, we see how it works, we see how it feels, and then if we realize that something isn't for us, it's okay. You've tried it, you know now, you have your own lived experience as evidence or proof for yourself, and then at that point you can decide what else new you want to try, or which direction you want to head in, or which approach you're going to try, which path you're going to walk, which healing modality you want to try. There is so many that has a universal application, but it's these kinds of skills and the construction of that mindset that will help us to go through these transformational times and emerge as feeling within a sense of purpose, if that makes sense. I think that's the best way I can describe it. And then again, cycle begins again. We go through this period where time is where we express ourselves within a certain self-identification. Another transformation process occurs. We go to another level. This is the pattern of growth, or at least by my experience. You might feel differently, so take it or leave it. So that has been the major themes that have been coming up, the things that I can see and the information that I think would be most helpful for the week ahead, as well as just a quick message about problem solving. And this feels very much, we're dealing with a lot of extreme energy, and energy of extremes can be two complete polar opposites. If we think of the Ivar rune, it's the spine of consciousness. It is the axis of all existence, the world tree. If we look at that rune and all it encompasses, it represents the polar extremes of our experiences. And we can experience crushing lows and immense highs connected to a similar experience. We have to understand both aspects to find balance. And within the extremes of our experiences, we go to the depths of one thing to experience the heights of another. It's the breadth of feeling. Now, it's important to say that within certain, from my opinion, within certain extreme energies, if we are approaching a problem that we feel that we need to solve with the same energy of the problem, we remain at the same level of it. And actually, this can be, again, applied to any aspect of life. We need to be able to shift ourselves out of the mindset of the problem and almost elevate away to a completely different level of thinking, of consciousness, of mindset, whatever you want to call it, in order to find solutions, creative solutions to that problem. It's transcending above something without disconnecting from it, if that makes sense. I don't think I've explained that, and I don't think I've done that justice in the way that I wanted to. But again, this is just a reminder of us to be conscious of the energy that we're putting out there, especially when we're approached with very extreme energies. If people have very extreme beliefs and then we come at them with the polar opposite extreme belief, nothing actually gets solved. It just creates a polar opposite conflict. It creates opposition. So it feels to me we need to be, at one level at least, responsible with our energy, intentions, and our power in a lot of ways, to be able to assess a situation, and not from a place of being above anything, but being able to come to a level where we meet the problem differently, and in that way hopefully find solutions. So I hope that makes sense. Let's do some runes. Let's see what comes through. Ooh, and now we've got Tivaz, and Tivaz has come out sideways. Interestingly, again, speaking about balance, about finding that midway point. Nothing is ever, or nobody is ever entirely, I think this is saying to us to be very conscious of those extremes, of looking at things in solely opposed dualistic terms. You know, love, hate, good, evil, those kinds of things. Trying to come away from that kind of thinking and finding the midway point, because within each of us is a level of truth. There is an ideal, there is a highest truth that we can access. The sense of balance comes from us having experienced both extremes. The sense of balance held within Tivaz comes from having experienced the highs and the crushing lows. It comes from being able to see both sides, to be able to weigh up and assess things with clarity, with calmness, with a sound judgment, with grace sometimes, and be able to make a decision. And sometimes those decisions are very difficult to make. They ask us to make difficult decisions in order to do the right thing. But this feels very much like a weighing up, a balancing, and trying not to look at things in extremes, or stepping into that oppositional energy, and bringing ourselves down to the level of an issue when we can find solutions, creative solutions, or a way through things when we come from a different perspective, when we come from a different level of consciousness. Interesting. Okay, we've got Lagus in the reverse. So I'm going to hold them these side because I think it looks better. We have Lagus in the reverse now. Lagus is the rune connected to water, to flow, to healing. The fact that this has come out in the reverse is giving me a sense of being very, very conscious where things feel stuck, where things aren't flowing. If we are constantly, if it feels like having to push water uphill, that kind of energy to me is the inverse of Lagus. So perhaps we are consistently trying to go against the flow of the tide, or at least it feels that way. And we have been overly expending our energy to try and prevent something from flowing in the opposite direction, when actually all that thing wants to do is flow in that direction. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, why are we trying to prevent what feels like potentially that this course, this flow of something else? So if we're trying to force things outside of ourselves to go our way, this is a point at which we can question our intention for doing that. This is where we have to self-reflect, never to berate ourselves, but to be aware of our motivation for doing things sometimes, and ask ourselves the question again, how could we approach things differently? You know how it is, if there is somebody that you wish to do something, I'm thinking of children, or even animals, pets, if you really want them to do something and you're constantly forced with a certain energy, you're met with oppositional energy. and nothing gets solved, nothing gets done. And sometimes you have to find a more creative way of approaching that doesn't involve pushing the water upstream and going against its natural flow, but finding a way to work with that flow and directing it in a better path. I like that. And we'll get one more. What do we have? Oh, we have answers. So answers has come out in that position. This really feels like maybe questioning or being mindful of where we receive our guidance. Now, obviously, if you've listened to this video so far, please always take what I say with a pinch of salt. I would always say take what resonates, take what feels right or feels constructive for you, and anything that doesn't, you don't have to take it. I would say that I had noticed a trend in, say a trend, it's quite a similar, historically similar pattern for the times of certain sources becoming very polarized in their approach, which creates a lot of division, a lot of almost segregational energy. And they might be very well meaning, but actually by diminishing a certain group of people who might be very well meaning and actually have a lot of similar goals, they can have a very detrimental effect. And I think this is a message of being very mindful of the information that we're taking in. I think also, as we're approaching the new moon, be conscious of your practices, be conscious of your own spiritual energy, for want of a better word. Where do you wish to invest that? I know sometimes we get completely lost in thought loops and we go off on wanderings and we think, I don't know, I do this. It can be like a daydream. But this is asking us to be really conscious of those thoughts, of that imagination, of where our mind is wandering, of the things that we're telling us, and really pull it back into focus. Ask ourselves, what spiritual experiences do we want to have? How do we wish to connect? And finding our own unique and meaningful ways of honoring, practicing, of ritual, of expression, of all of these things that feel right and feel meaningful, that honor time-honored traditions, but also are reflective of our personal experiences as well. I feel like this whole reading this week has been finding flow and balance. And again, there is always a balance to be found within all of this energy of extremes. So with answers coming out in this position, it's saying definitely lean into your spiritual processes, but also be I'm trying to be mindful of where others' viewpoints may potentially be, perhaps we feel like we're being pulled in different directions or being led down a certain path. And if that path doesn't feel right for you, then it's okay not to walk it. I think that's the best way I can express the energy that was coming through with that one. So I'm going to leave this here for you. As ever, thank you for spending your time with me. If you've made it this far and listened to nearly 24 minutes of me going on, then I truly value and appreciate you, because it's a lot to get through. But just sending you all my love for the week ahead. I will try and pop back with some more information readings. Sending you all my love, and I will speak to you really, really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.